We are creatures of desire. What we most desire is meaning. What makes us suffer most is a lack of meaning.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Marital therapist, author, and communications trainer Andrew G. Marshall invites guests from all walks of life to discuss what makes life meaningful.
Hello, I'm Andrew G. Marshall. Welcome to The Meaningful Life. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, and wherever you find your podcasts. Do you feel stuck? However you approach the problem and however hard you strive, it seems that you're just hitting your head against a brick wall. Perhaps you have reached the despair moment and feel that giving up is the only solution. But there is another option. According to my witness today, you could engage your genius energy. She is Dr. Diana Hill, who is an expert in acceptance and commitment therapy, host of the Wise Effort podcast, and author of a new book called Wise Effort: How to Focus Your Genius Energy on What Matters Most. Well, welcome, Diana. Now, what in your childhood prepared you to write this book?
What didn't prepare me to write this book? Asking about childhood, there's so much there, right? So when I think about childhood, I think about my temperament and how I came into the world. I came into the world as a very sensitive being, always sensitive to plants and animals and people and a lot of inner life. And that was also a mismatch from some of the worlds that I was in. I was in a very high pressure academic schooling system where I kind of learned to turn off my emotional intelligence and my sensitivity. But then at the same time, I had parents from very diverse sort of spiritual backgrounds. I went to Catholic school. My mom was Christian and my dad was Buddhist. So I had all these mixed up messages going on in terms of what do I do? What is my path? And that actually ended up leading me to having not the mixed up messages, but this emotional sensitivity and also this persistence and academic achievement aspect of me led me to have an eating disorder in my early teens. And that was very much part of my childhood as well.
Did I hear you say the word eating disorder?
Anorexia when I was 14, 15. I learned that I could turn off my feelings by not eating. You can turn off your body, your interoceptive awareness, all the signals that are going on, and that also turns off your emotions. And so I was very severely anorexic in my early teens. And that actually ended up shaping a lot of the course of my career and my path, my research direction, and also part of this understanding of what leads us to strive so hard towards something, even if it's harming us.
Because I don't think anorexia would be described as wise effort. Lots of effort, but not much wisdom in it. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think of people with anorexia, they're sort of the Olympians of striving. They're doing everything society has told them to do at an Olympic level, and the consequences, right, are to them. So no, it's not wise effort. And actually, when I went on to run a treatment center for eating disorders, I was a clinical director, and I would look at my clients across the way from me and I would say, well, gosh, if you could take the energy that you are putting into shutting off your system, you could take the energy that you're putting into striving towards these unachievable goals, and you actually put it towards something that matters to you, imagine what could open up for you. Because the idea here is not to turn that off. Don't be so sensitive or don't be so persistent, but rather how to harness that genius within you towards more wholesome, skillful means, which is really much more what wise effort is about.
So let's look at striving. Now, we think that if we work harder, we will become unstuck. I mean, where do you think we've got this message from?
Well, we've gotten it because sometimes it does work, trying to get the top off a pickle jar. You work a little harder at it. You might get it unstuck, right? Sometimes we give up too early because we're not working hard enough.
Yes, but shouting at your husband louder doesn't generally make it better.
Right. So in the arena of our inner world, in the arena of our relationships, working harder often leads us to get more stuck. In the book, Wise Effort, I use this metaphor of a bird caught in a kitchen, and there's a big window over the sink, right? And what does the bird, when they're caught in the kitchen, do but fly at that window and hit its head? And then eventually, if you fly at that same window enough times, You'll sit on the floor of your kitchen life and you'll say, I give up. I don't want to do this anymore. With wise effort, I believe that it's not about giving up. It's about flexibility. It's about finding another path. Little bird, you need to fly, whatever your flight path is. But maybe there's an open door that you've never seen before or thought of because you are so stuck in a story about how it's supposed to look. You are avoiding the discomfort of turning around and trying something new, or you are holding on too tight to things being the same. And those three things, stuck in a story, avoiding discomfort, holding on too tight, are the very things that kept me stuck in anorexia, but are also the things that keep you stuck in a fight with your partner in the kitchen where you're just going at it the same way, but not getting any way out, or maybe in your relationships at work or your inability to get your book started, right? Whatever it is that people are stuck in, they tend to go after the same thing over and over again, as opposed to getting more flexible with their behavior, their attention, their emotions. And that's what wise effort is about.
Yes, because I really liked those three things about when you're getting stuck. So let's actually just break those down very quickly again. It's probably down to one of these three things, running away from discomfort. So tell me more about that.
Running away from discomfort. Let's go to the, you're fighting with your partner because you brought that one up. Somehow fighting with your partner also happens in kitchens, at least in our house. Birds is stuck in the kitchen and fighting with my partner in the kitchen. The kids are in the back of the house. Here we are, end of day. We're exhausted. And here's the running away from discomfort. It's uncomfortable to maybe be in the sadness that you're feeling, or it's uncomfortable to be in the anger that you're feeling, or in the disconnect, or it's uncomfortable to acknowledge the role that you're playing, right? And so the ways in which we run away are things like, I don't want to talk about this anymore, right? So we shut it down. Or maybe we run away by pouring a glass of wine, right? Yes.
Or it's all your fault. So nothing to do with me, no flies on me.
Right, right. Or the subtle runaways, pull out your phone. Don't talk about it. Numb yourself out a little bit. Distract yourself. Talk about things that aren't important. There's this concept in psychology called the urgency effect. It's a cognitive bias. The urgency effect is we tend to prioritize things that seem very urgent but aren't important. So hold on a second. I got to answer this email. But what's really important is your partner right there and the health of your relationship, right? So we have all different ways, different strategies, and I go through them in the book, ways in which we run away. And the irony is that the more you run away from discomfort, the more stuck you will get. And that is the case for our inner world in particular, and especially our feelings. The field of psychology has evolved a lot, and there's a lot of understanding of how many of our psychological struggles in life, whether it's anxiety or depression or substance use or eating disorders, are due to this very thing of running away from discomfort. And one of the best skills you can develop is the capacity to make space for and be with this discomfort, because in that discomfort is also your values, maybe how you want to be with your partner.
So let's move on to the second one, holding on too tightly.
Holding on too tight. So one of the premises or facts of life is that everything is in constant state of change.
That's your Buddhist upbringing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Oh my gosh. It's my Buddhist upbringing, but it's also, my dad was a Buddhist, but he was also a bankruptcy lawyer.
Oh.
And if you're a bankruptcy lawyer, you get paid in stuff, but all this stuff has debt associated to it. So my dad would show up with a pony and he'd say, kids, we got a pony, but we only have the pony for 6 months. We got to sell the pony to get the payment. Kids, we got a house. One day he rolled up in front of our house in a Rolls Royce. We were in a cul-de-sac average neighborhood. He rolls up in a Rolls Royce. Kids, we got a Rolls Royce, but we can't drive it because we can't insure it. So I learned the message of impermanence very early on from this combination of a Buddhist bankruptcy attorney dad. And the nature of impermanence is that if you hold on to things that are changing, you will get rope burn. Attachment. In clinical psychology, we call it experiential attachment. We are attached to our, go back to the fight in the kitchen with the partner. We're attached to, we want it to stay the same. We don't want to let go of some belief that we have. We don't want our partners to change. We don't want to age. We don't want our kids to grow up. We don't want our
children to grow up, do we? That's the one I was thinking about. We want them to be forever 12.
Well, yeah. Or if you have, for me, I have a 12-year-old now. I wish he were 7, right? So this, the impermanence is so wild. I mean, our bodies, I heard this stat the other day that 88% of the dust in your house is made up of skin cells. It's disgusting. Even our bodies are impermanent, right? So holding on too tight while everything around us and within us is in a constant state of change keeps us stuck, because what we actually need to learn how to do and be is to be able to move with the flow and to be flexible and fluid and adaptable to the changes that are happening in our life.
And the third one is we're stuck in the story. I like this one because I use stories a lot in my therapy. We unpack fairy tales quite often. And one thing that happens in fairy tales is nobody is stuck in anything for very long. There's always something turning up.
Well, fairy tales in themselves are a story. And I think it highlights the power of the human mind. We have these evolved newer parts of our brain that are storytelling. Lizards don't have stories. Your dog doesn't have a story. My dog barks when the UPS person comes, and then the UPS person goes and they've forgotten about the UPS person. But if we have someone that comes to our house and freaks us out in some way, or we have an encounter at work that activates our nervous system, we'll carry that story for weeks. So the nature of the human mind is it makes up stories, and it can be very helpful to make up stories like fantasies and fairy tales and lovely things. Storytelling is a way we communicate, but it can be very problematic when we believe all of the stories that our mind creates. We do not have separation between them, and we let those stories dictate what we prioritize, dictate our behavior, and dictate our attention. So if I'm in that kitchen and I'm stuck in a story that I am right and he is wrong, or I'm stuck at the story that there's something wrong with me, that's another one. We can be in self-critical stories, or I'm stuck in a story that I'm not good enough or better than. All of these, no matter what story you're in, I am, I always, I never, you are, you always, you never. Those are signs that I use in therapy to see if someone's stuck in a story. As soon as they start saying that, I am, then notice what you prioritize when you believe that story to be true. Notice what you pay attention to. Notice how you reinforce your own story, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that is very problematic. That will keep you stuck. That will keep you flying at your window and hitting your head over and over again. So we need space from our stories. We need to identify what are our stories, and we need to open up our minds to the possibility that there's many stories and many perspectives, and we can use our values to choose our behavior, not just our stories.
So at this point, I'm going to channel one of my many clients who are going to say, okay, Diana, I believe you that I'm, in fact, probably doing all three of those things, but I have no idea what else to do. And that's when genius energy comes in. So tell us what it is and tell us a bit about it.
Well, I think it's where genius energy comes in and wisdom comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So I see genius energy is what makes you, you, the unique aspects, your je ne sais quoi. And back in the Roman times, they described genius as sort of these protectors that moved from house to house, right? So I'm not talking about Stanford Binet scores here. I'm talking about the qualities of Andrew that developed over the course of your life that are unique to you, that are your interests, your emotional intelligence, that when you are in flow, effort becomes effortless, your character strengths. And we need those to get you out of that stuck kitchen, right? Just like the qualities of that bird, the bird needs to fly. So when you are stuck, the first thing to know is to remember that you have strengths and you have capacities that are unique to you that you need. But the second thing to know is that you also need those strengths and those capacities to be directed through wisdom and to be directed towards values through matters of the heart. Because your genius qualities, I described mine in the beginning. I'm extremely emotionally sensitive, and I'm also quite persistent. And you could see how both of those could become problematic for me, as they did, anorexia. Yeah. So you need wisdom to guide them.
So these are a gift and a challenge, I think I'm hearing you say.
Right. I mean, we see this all over the place, right? Your gifts are your challenges. But there is a process through which I take people through in the Wise Effort Method, which is getting curious about those strengths, those genius qualities. What are you hiding? What are you not allowing to come to fruition? What's directed in the wrong spots? Where are you putting too much energy, too much of your life force? And then how do you open up your heart, your mind, your body to start to use that genius? So you're in the kitchen, you're fighting with your spouse, and you remember, oh, I have a genius here of emotional sensitivity. Can I turn that towards him and tune into him and ask how he is feeling about this, ask questions about his inner world. And that would be aligned with maybe some values that you also have around compassion or connection or intimacy. And that's how we can get ourselves unstuck.
So is our genius energy, our wisdom, is it one sentence like you've just said, or is it like a short paragraph? Because I don't think I could get myself down into one sentence like that.
No, I think we have many geniuses. In the book, I talk about 5 ways to look at your genius.
Okay, shall we have a look at those then?
Yeah. So one is, and I can ask you questions. I'll do it for you, Andrew. I think it's always good at demo. So one way to look at your genius is when you are in flow. So the flow has to do with your interests, right? Mm-hmm. When you are in flow, what are you doing?
Well, I'm doing something creative. I'm a writer, so I'll be writing a book probably. So so it's about creativity, I think, is when I'm in flow.
Okay. So we have one aspect of your genius, which is about creativity, and in particular in the writing space, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you were a kid, what did people say about you? How'd they describe you?
Well, I'm afraid to say I'm going to come to it through a negative way, because I was always told I was too sensitive.
There you go. Right. So now we're tapping into some emotional intelligence of yours. So we have creativity, we have sensitivity, emotional sensitivity, right? So we have interest as part of our genius energy. Emotional intelligence is part of our genius energy. Character strengths is another one. And this is a well-researched one in positive psychology. Martin Seligman has done a lot of work in the area of character strengths. And the question I'd like to ask about this one is, when people come to ask for help from you, they're like, oh, Andrew, he could help me with this. Friends or family. And I'm not talking about like necessarily fixing doors or taking pickle jar tops off. What do they come to you for?
They certainly wouldn't come to me to take the top off a pickle jar or to fix a door. I'm the world's least practical person.
Okay.
They're going to come to me for emotional reasons, generally.
Mm-hmm. And be more specific about that. Like, give me an example of recently when somebody came to you for an emotional reason.
Not work-wise. It generally tends to be they're looking for a bit of free advice. So I had somebody who was suffering from an addiction problem, and they were looking for some suggestions of where they should go. So that was really tapping into my sort of network and my knowledge.
Yeah. So you have a knowledge base, a network. And why do you think they came to you for that?
Well, I think because I'm pretty non-judgmental. That, you take drugs, say, tell me more sort of kind of thing, rather than you dirty, naughty person sort of kind of thing.
Great. So some of your character strengths, and character strengths tend to be these like qualities that we would aspire to, things like leadership or zest for life or humorous or non-judgmentalness, right? So one of your genius energies is being non-judgmental. So we have creativity, we have emotional sensitivity, and we have non-judgmental, Andrew. And then I'll just do one more. Here's another one. When you are at a party, a gathering, what would we see you doing? Would we see you talking a lot and sort of being the life of the party, gathering people together? Would we see you maybe kind of off in the corner, pouring a little, drink and having a little quiet time? Would we see you in the bathroom taking deep breaths, to get through this event? What would we see if you were at a party or an event?
Well, I think I'd probably be talking. I'm not very good at small talk. I've discovered as I get older, I'm not very good at small talk. If you want to talk about the meaning of life or, the fact you've just discovered that you're on the autistic scale, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. But I'm going to be less interested in your collection of Star Wars toys. Or
maybe you ask them about the meaning of that for them. Yeah. You have Star Wars toys. Tell me about how that developed. Tell me about your childhood and how that developed for you and what is manifesting. So for you, there's an openness and a depth in your personality. So another aspect of our genius energy is just our personality style, our personality, our temperament, right? But also how we show up in relationship to others, what personality style. And you're a deep thinker, deep connector. So these are just aspects of your genius energy. Now, there is another part of this, which is if you could, sure, we could distill that into some word, but it's sort of like my grandma used to teach me how to paint. She'd get a strawberry out and she'd put all these dabs of colors on a palette, a little bit of cadmium red and a little bit of, particular yellow, and she'd mix them together and we'd paint the strawberry, and that would be unique to that strawberry. So Andrew has this unique palette mixture of these qualities of emotional sensitivity and non-judgmentalness and writing creativity and depth, meaningful conversation, right? That's what makes Andrew up. If you could draw upon that genius energy in a moment where you are struggling and stuck, that would be phenomenal, because that is what comes easily to you. It's what makes you, you. And you've even made a whole life, talk about wise livelihood. You've made a whole life that's aligned with your genius. Perfect. That's why you do this work. That's why you are driven to it. It is not a should. It is natural to you. It's your capacities flourishing and showing up like a seed in the right soil. We need wisdom and we need values to help guide that, because there's also things and ways in which your genius might get off track. If you only want to have deep conversations, you also need to know how to have a surface conversation to get to the deep conversation, right?
Yeah, and you can burn out if, you have a whole evening of work where people are telling you your problems, and then suddenly you go out socially and you're hearing all about the ins and outs of autism, for example, which on one level is really useful and interesting. And, I was very much enjoyed the conversation last night, but you could have too much of that, couldn't you?
Absolutely. That's a perfect example. You can put too much of your genius into things and you feel you get burned out by it. And then you can even get like a little resentful, right? And my guess is that there was something in there that, kind of kept you stuck in that conversation. It could be a story about I should be listening to this, or avoiding discomfort of like changing the topic, or, holding on too tight, whatever it is. So that's our genius. Yeah.
I was genuinely interested. Mm-hmm. So that conversation was not a problem. I didn't feel stuck there. But there are times when I do feel stuck. Yes.
Yeah. So then the question is, how do we get unstuck? And I think that's where values and wisdom come in.
Well, I'm thinking it's something else as well. And I love this quote of yours from Rilke: try to love the questions themselves. And I'm going to, in a moment, ask you why that's so important. But for me, I think people get stuck is because they try rushing straight for the answer rather than going on the journey to find the answer. And that's why I think the questions you have to learn to love the questions. Am I getting that right?
Yes, absolutely. That's the opening up the mind, opening up your sense of self, opening up your feelings. And that opening up process is we don't know where we are going to go. I interviewed Rosemary Traumer, who's a poet who wrote a lot of poetry after her son took his own life. And she's written a poem a day for 9 years, a poem a day. And when I asked her about, how do you do that? How do you come up with a poem a day? Her answer was, whenever I start a poem, I never have an end to it. I don't know where it's going. I let the poem unfold as I'm writing it, right? So if we could approach our own problems in that way, with that open, curious mind, we are then entering the flow of energy, the flow of life. We are no longer resisting, and we're seeing where it takes us. That back to the whole impermanence thing, we actually have much less control than we think that we do. And it's our attempts to control and come to the end point that often gets us in a lot of trouble. Like this interview, I don't know where we're going. I'm just in the flow of it with you, Andrew.
And I have not an awful lot of knowledge about where we're going. I've got a few points that I'm going to hit, and we're just going to go there.
Yeah.
So one of the techniques that you use, which I think is really good, I've actually just started borrowing it, and asking people for their nightmare review, because I think this also helps us understand why we're stuck. So tell me what the nightmare review is and why it's so powerful.
Well, people don't want to do it, but they're already rehearsing it in their mind, right? So the nightmare review, it actually came from my good friend and book coach, Jenny Nash, who's taught me a lot about writing. The very first thing she did, she actually came on it. So she was on a retreat with me in Costa Rica and going through this whole wise effort method with me. And she came out of the retreat and she said, I want to see your book. I want to see what you've written. And she said to me after she read it, she said, well, if you were to write a nightmare review of what you don't want this book to be, exactly where you don't want it to go, what would it say? And I said things like, oh, I'm just rehashing what everyone else has said. I'm not showing up authentically. I'm not using my own voice. And she looked at me and she said, guess what? It's that. 1-star nightmare review. So what I actually recommend, and that was some hard feedback and actually motivated me to go back and rewrite the whole thing from a more authentic self. But what our nightmare review is you could do it of your life. You could do it of the next year. How you don't want to show up. If someone were to write a review of you at work or a you as a parent or whatever domain it is that you care about, your writing, your Substack, and it was exactly what you don't want it to say, what would it say? And it tells you a lot about what you do want. It tells you what you actually care about. And then it may give you the courage to live a more fearless life so that you could have a fearless genius review, which is playing a lot bigger usually and a lot deeper usually than how we play. So that's the benefit of the nightmare review. I highly recommend it. It's scary to do. The key is that you're not writing a nightmare review of like, my house burned down and then I lost all my money. It's a review of you, of how you show up, because that is what you have power over, is how you show up in the world. You don't have a lot of power over how the world shows up for you.
So what you're saying over and over again is we have to open up to ourselves and get curious. That normally means welcoming unpleasant and unwelcome feelings. So how do we get over that hump?
I have a sign in my living room. And it's right next to, it's actually a symbol. It's a piece of cut wood with calligraphy on it. And it sits in my living room when you come in the door. And I got it from Plum Village Monastery, which is in southern France. I go to southern France to Thich Nhat Hanh's monastery. It says, the way out is in. It's not a hump we get over. Difficult feelings are not a hump that we get over. And if we actually believe that difficult feelings are a hump that we're supposed to get over, then we will speed over that speed bump. And it's actually in the difficult feelings, your capacity to go there and be with them, that is the most important thing that you can learn how to do, because underneath that feeling, that difficult feeling, is often something that you care about. If you slow down over that speed bump and actually hang out there and get to know it, you might discover that whether it's your grief around losing someone, right? So grief, the size of your grief is the size of your love. Then you can discover the size of your love. Or it's your anxiety about going to that party where you don't know anyone. Why are we anxious about going to parties where we don't know anyone? Because we long to belong. And if you could stay there long enough, you could meet your longing to belong. And how old is that? And how could you cultivate belonging within yourself? So our feelings are avenues to a deeper understanding of our values. And we don't want to, rush over those speed bumps. We want to get to know them. We want to explore them. And we can explore them by first just getting into our bodies, like, where is this feeling inside of me? Is it in my chest? It is in my forehead? Is it in my belly? Feeling. I feel you. What is its color, its texture, its weight? Can I breathe and be with it? But then we can also start to have some conversations with these feelings. Like, what is it that you need? Why are you here? What's this about? And sometimes it's just not even like getting an answer. It's just dropping. Stephen Batchelor, who I interviewed a while back, he wrote a number of books around secular Buddhism, but he talks about just dropping a question into your belly and just letting it be like, why are you here? What do you need? And then we can also do the practice of, what is this feeling telling me about what I care about? And when you get to that, I am feeling angry at my husband in the kitchen because I really care about whatever it is, my autonomy, my respect. I care about us. I care about, our family having a little more space in our lives, whatever it is. Once you get to that, what is it that you care about? Then you have an action step. And as a behavioral psychologist, a cognitive behavioral psychologist at my roots, I believe in action steps. I believe in it's not just about insight. It's also about action, and our feelings can guide us towards action if we stay there long enough.
So do you hear your genius energy, wise energy, as a voice, as a gut feeling? How do you actually experience it?
I believe our wisdom is in many places. So I believe our wisdom is in our bodies. If you've ever had that feeling of a whole body yes, someone asks you to do something, you're like, oh, yes, or a whole body no. And sometimes we override that whole body no. My body is shutting down. It's saying no, but I'm saying yes because I think I should, right? So we have the wisdom of our bodies. I believe that we also have wisdom in our life experience. I can look back over my life and see the samsara. I can see the places that I've gotten stuck so many times before, and I can have a little bit of wisdom based on that. I can learn from my life experience. I believe that there's wisdom in nature. We resonate, like when you go into a forest or you get to the top of a mountain, or for me, I'm in Santa Barbara. I look at the ocean behind me. I look out over the ocean and I am actually activating parts of my brain when I look out at that horizon that are much more allocentric, that are much more about this interconnection. So there's wisdom in that. I believe there's wisdom in human connection. I could call it our second bodies, when I'm stuck and I call a friend, or I talk to a teacher, or I talk to my kids, and I get a different perspective and wisdom from them than me just carrying it on my own. So we often we think about cleverness, but cleverness is not your genius. Your genius is your unique aspects about you that make you you. And you combine that, you direct it with wisdom, which is all these other things: wisdom in your body, wisdom in nature, wisdom in human connection, wisdom in your life experience.
So you have 3 steps to cultivating your genius energy. First of all, we get curious. We've been doing that one. Then we open up. We've been doing that one. And then the third one is you focus your energy. So tell us about focusing your energy.
Yeah. I think many of us feel scattered with our energy. I think we feel overwhelmed, bombarded by too many things to do, or sometimes we're over-focused on one thing and we're neglecting all these other important things, right? So right before this, I was dropping my son off, my 12-year-old. He has a bike trip, an overnight bike trip. And I knew I needed to get back to Andrew Marshall's interview at 9:30, and I had to drop him off at 9, and we live up on the hill. And there's different ways I could focus my energy there, right? So I could focus my energy while I'm dropping off my son, and he's got his big bag and he's going overnight on this trip with his school. Second day of school, they take him out on a bike trip. I could focus my energy on worrying about getting back to my interview with Andrew and not be present for the drop off. And if I did that, you can imagine what would happen to my emotional sensitivity, right? Like I missed out on this connection. I could focus my energy on being wholly 100% there for my son. And I'm like, linger, blah, 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 and be late for my interview with Andrew on the mindful, on the meaningful.
And she was exactly on time, spot on.
So I could focus my energy on that, right? I'm just being there for my son. And that could be problematic too, because this is another important part. I'm a persistence, right? An important part of my genius energy is being on time. And I have values around respect for people, showing up for people. So how do I do that? How do I focus my energy? And what I did there, here's what I did, is I talked to him about it on the way down. I said, I need to leave at 9:10 to get back for this interview, but I'm going to be with you 100% until 9:10. And on the car down, I was 100% with him, walking him out there 100% with him, loving him all the way, just all present. Took a picture, hugged him, got the name tag on him, got his bag in the right spot. And that, 15 minutes with my son was so connected that it actually was better than if I stayed there for an hour half connected, right? So then I could let him go and then get in the car and drive back to see and start this interview. That's a focus of energy. And the only way that you can do that effectively is you have to have clarity around values. And you also have to be able to let some things go, like let go of the story that I'm going to be late, get present here. I need to let go of I'm a bad mom for scheduling this too tight, or I'm a bad, psychologist for, whatever, having kids. That we can live in a much more complex, many different identities make us up. And we can do it in a way that uses our genius energy, but focuses it with values.
So let's look at focusing our genius energy on a problem that's been sent in to me by a listener, and we'll be doing that in just a moment.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material and other benefits.
Guess how long I've been helping couples have more fulfilling relationships? The answer shocked me. 39 years. Over this time, I've developed all sorts of interventions to help couples communicate better and make meaningful changes to protect and nurture their love. Some ideas I've used for a while and dropped. But at the core, there are a handful of must-haves that I use with all the couples I see face to face. Sadly, I can't work with everyone who wants my help, but I can share my best relationship tools. I've put them in a new course with worksheets and links to my most helpful podcasts. There are 4 hours of instructions to do at your pace together, with your partner or on your own. And it normally retails at £150. But to launch, I've dropped them to a special introductory price of £99.50. If you'd like to find out more, go to andrewgmarshall.com/tools and get started on improving your relationship.
Podbean, your message amplified.
Ready to share your message with the world? Start your podcast journey with Podbean.
Podbean, the AI-powered all-in-one podcast platform.
Thousands of businesses and enterprises trust Podbean to launch their podcasts.
Use Podbean to record your podcast.
Use Podbean AI to optimize your podcast.
Use Podbean AI to turn your blog into a podcast.
Use Podbean to distribute your podcast everywhere.
Launch your podcast on Podbean today.
If you'd like to write in with a problem, come to my website, andrewgmarshall.com. Go to podcast section and you'll see there's a participate in the program. Hello, I have a question about boundaries with kids and about emotional manipulation. My husband and I broke up 8 years ago, and it was a strange break because nobody cheated. He was emotionally down and he said that he was not a family guy. Our son was 2 at the time and my husband's father died 1 year before that. So I was trying to reach him and talk, but he didn't want to except when he was drunk. What do? I want to move forward and have a new boyfriend, even though I may still be in love with my ex and don't have a clear close to our relationship. So let's put some genius energy together for this. So let's get curious first.
Mm-hmm. So there's so many different threads to pull here. The first thing that I heard in there was getting curious about sort of the stories that this person has. I mean, I heard stories in there. So I heard the story that you only break up if someone's cheating.
Yes, that was interesting.
I'm like, well, that's interesting. I've seen a lot of breakups where people aren't cheating. And in some ways you could think about alcohol use as cheating. You know, he was escaping through his alcohol, and he was escaping through his alcohol in part because he was in so much pain and he didn't know how to be with his pain of his dad passing. And here you are attempting. So get curious about the stories you have about who breaks up and how you're supposed to break up and what it's supposed to look like. Because oftentimes those supposed tos in life make us feel like there's something wrong with us in the way that it happened for us.
I'd be interested to know what the story is behind being a family guy as well. What's a family guy?
What's a family guy? Exactly.
And I suppose in particular, obviously he's not here to ask, but what's a family guy for her husband as well, or her ex-husband? What does that mean?
Right.
And is it the same for her?
Right. And then if we're not following the stories or the scripts that we think it's supposed to be, how do we feel about ourselves? Right. Or how do we get stuck in trying to make it that script? We want to go back and make it that. Make him a family guy. Right. So that's one thing to get curious about is the stories. There's another thing that I would get curious about, and we're just sort of replaying what's keeping us stuck, right? Because there's another thing to get curious about is what discomfort are you avoiding? And my guess is that there's a lot of grief and a lot of loss and a lot of pain to feel.
Because this is 8 years later, it seems a bit, right. I mean, to me, I'm curious about why wait 8 years to think about having a new partner, because I don't think I could wait 8 years. Could you?
I could if it felt like it was too painful to walk through that threshold. There's something that is too painful or feels too painful to walk through. And that's the very thing, I'll tell this to the listener, that's what you need to walk through. Francis Weller talks about these gates of grief, and I write about them in the book. And one of the gates of grief is that which we hoped for, but we didn't receive. And that's what I hear in there. It's like, I hoped for closure. I hoped for a marriage. You had a 2-year-old with him, right? So maybe you hoped for a dad to your kids in a certain way and you didn't receive it. And you hoped just to connect with him when he was going through, the loss of his dad, and you didn't get that either. So that which we hoped for, we didn't receive. And walking through that grief, being in that grief and understanding that grief tells you a lot about what you care about and how you want to show up in your next relationship. So as long as we're holding too tight and we're not moving through and towards our feelings, we're running away and we're holding too tight, it blocks us from what you want, which is another relationship. So you got to go back and do some of that work of opening up to feeling and letting go so that then you can do the exciting next thing, which is living out your values in a new relationship.
Because I'm wondering, as I'm sitting here listening to this letter, is where is the anger? That seems to be the missing emotion, because I'm sorry, but if I had a 2-year-old child with somebody and they decided they weren't into families at that point, I think I'd be rather angry.
Yeah. So, different people are more comfortable with emotions than others. And for some people, they're very uncomfortable with anger because they have life histories that didn't allow them to be angry. It wasn't safe to be angry. There is also conditioning around women and anger, and women can't be angry, right? And so that sort of automatic, well, why aren't you angry? I'd be angry. We'd have to look at that like, well, anger is there. There's a function to every emotion. Every emotion we have has a reason. And anger is there to protect us and to protect others. So is there a part of you? Is there a protector that has gone underground? And maybe we want her to show up a little bit more for you. And that may be with anger.
Her first question, her first introduction is, I have a question about boundaries.
I know. She didn't even talk about that.
She doesn't talk about it. Or emotional manipulation.
Right.
But
emotional manipulation, boundaries. So you hear a little flare of anger there. And he said boundaries with guys, and he emotionally manipulated me. Right. But then she doesn't, talk about that. So yeah, those are all, we all can have many different parts within us. Right. And many different emotional responses within us. And some show up in one situation. And so she may have a part of her which is angry that needs to be expressed. She may have a part of her that is sad and grieving that needs to be expressed. She may have a part of her that is incredibly self-critical and self-blaming and needs to be understood and expressed, So all of these different parts, the idea behind a wise self and opening to your wise self and your genius energy is that there are strengths within you that will help you get through this. And there is a wisdom that if you tap into it, that can help you move through and flow into another relationship. And it requires getting curious, opening up, and then focusing your energy. And if your energy is focused on 8 years ago, then you will be stuck in 8 years ago for a very long time.
And if your energy is focused entirely on your son as well, that will also be something that will stop you from developing a relationship too. What I'm suddenly struck by is how, although each of us have a genius energy inside, we tend to think, oh, well, if I write to Andrew or if I ask Diana, she will find the genius in me, or I'll tap into her genius. We have great trouble in believing in our own genius energy.
Yeah, and rightfully so, because sometimes we've been told that there's something wrong with us, right? You're too loud, you're too sensitive, you're too creative, you can't sit still. And then when you see the people that actually take that genius and utilize it, the person that can't sit still is like the most amazing dance instructor, or the person that, was so creative and messy in school becomes the most creative scientist. So there's a tendency to look to others' wisdom and also to look to others' genius and not honor our own. And that's why the deep inquiry of getting to know yourself, like your authentic, who are you, that you that makes you you, I think is a really beautiful thing. And I would guess if you were to ask people, if you were at just like I was sort of doing the inquiry of what is your genius energy, Andrew? If you were to ask other people what they see in you as your genius, it's kind of an embarrassing thing to do because we have this whole thing about like, we're genius, but what do they see in me as like, is different about me or makes me me, They can see it easily, just like you can see it in your sister and your best friend and your boss, like you can see their genius energy, but then you can also see where their genius becomes their problem. And so we start to, just like you can see the genius energy of an oak tree or the genius energy of your dog. I mean, my dog has a genius. So everyone does. This is the unique qualities that make you you.
Mine was being able to find food when no other dog, every other dog had given up, but my dog could find the most ghastly thing to eat that every other dog had actually given up on.
Yeah. Mine can open doors. That's my dog genius. No matter what door, she's got this little cleverness to her. So yeah, it's kind of fun when you start to think about it in that way,
So let's look at you a little bit, because as a witness on The Meaningful Life, I need to ask you, what makes your life meaningful?
What makes my life meaningful is the capacity to give and receive love. And I see it as an exchange, an energetic exchange, not just one way. So I give and receive love in my clinical work with my clients. I love my clients. I know that they feel love from me, and I am energized by them, by their growth and their vulnerability. I give and receive love as a parent and as a partner. I give and receive love on this planet as a lover of nature, giving and receiving love in my garden and in my trees. I give and receive love as an instructor at UCSB, where I instruct graduate students in resilience and mindfulness skills, and as a trainer of therapists that are struggling. And I show them that I've struggled too, and kind of give and receive love there. So that makes my life meaningful, because I believe that the meaning of life is to love, to give and receive love.
Well, that's a beautiful thought. Thank you very much for that. Well, this is where we're going to have to end, unless you are a supporter of The Meaningful Life. We're going to be talking in the bonus material about wise effort at work. And if you want to hear the bonus material, you can subscribe directly via Apple or Spotify. And if you want to become a supporter of The Meaningful Life and unlock the bonus material that way, here are the details.
You've been listening to The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. You can follow Andrew on Twitter, like him on Facebook, and please leave a review wherever you consume your podcasts. Making, editing, and distributing The Meaningful Life comes with substantial costs, and we'd like to ask for your help. Visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material for every program, send in a letter to be discussed by Andrew and his guests, and join a community of other people seeking to make their life meaningful. At the gold level, you get even more benefits. Production of The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall is by Michael Dooney. Social media by Madeleine Healy. Sound engineering and theme tune by Sebastian de la Luz Mendoza. And I'm Susie Colick. Please tell your friends and spread the word. Thank you.
From unsolved mysteries to unexplained phenomena, from comedy gold to relationship fails, Amazon Music's got the most ad-free top podcasts, included with Prime. Download the Amazon Music app today.